What's up, everybody? My name is Taylor Cooper. This is Might Be News, a very, very special episode of Might Be News. I have a very special guest. Before I get to that, we're always sponsored by Eunomia CBD. Go to eunomiacbd.com. Use promo code MBN. Get 20% off, free shipping, and a free gift. Also, check out mbnnetwork.com. It's never been easier for you to find your new favorite podcast. We have playlists for all the shows, everything. We've got links to our merch, our Patreon page, so much going on at mbnnetwork.com. Like I said, we have a very, very special guest this week, somebody that I'm very excited to talk to. Travis View is a conspiracy theory researcher, a writer, and co-host on the QAnon Anonymous podcast, among many other things. Travis View, thank you so much for being on the show.
Taylor, so thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So I'm just so excited to talk to you because I first heard you on your Undivided Attention podcast. You did a really great interview about QAnon with Tristan Harris, and it just kind of was like, all right, I've seen this Q word on the internet. I just never took the time to look into it. And once I heard you talking about it, it kind of was like, well, I recognize some of the stuff that he's talking about. I've seen some things that he's talking about on my timeline. So I just kind of got into it. And I found your show, QAnon Anonymous, and I absolutely love it. I send episode 1, the link to your first episode, to people all the time. It's just a audio glossary of all of this crazy brain-breaking stuff, and it's so helpful. So before we really get into it, I just want to thank you not only for being on the show, but also thank you for the work that you're doing, because I think it's very, very important.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, yeah, it is a bizarre world to dive into, but like when you really get into it, you kind of understand the sort of the weird, I guess, fantasy world that these people live in, and the ways in which it's causing some real problems for the lives of the people who believe in it.
That's the craziest part to me. That's the part that really that made me want to get involved or learn more about it, is because it's not the political aspect of it. It's the way that it's making people behave and how it's changing their family dynamic, their relationship dynamic, and work dynamic. So many things on a personal level can change drastically if you are a red-pilled individual.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, sometimes we talk about the damage that QAnon does. So you could point at, for example, QAnon followers have been charged with terrorism and murder, and there was a kidnapping plot and all these terrible things. But those are kind of like just the stuff that you see. More often than not, the real damage that QAnon does is to, like I said, the people believe in it. It does damage to their family life. It does damage to their hobbies, their career. There are people who, like I said, entire career that they've been doing for years is being derailed because they become obsessed with this fantasy world. So I think that's really generally the biggest focus is just the harm that this weird alternate fantasy life kind of does to people.
A lot of people that listen to the show and that I know personally don't know what QAnon is. I've mentioned it to them numerous times, and it's very confusing to them, and they don't know what I'm talking about and kind of look at me like I'm a crazy person. So my first question is, pretend that I just woke up from a 5-year coma, and I ask you, what is QAnon? What is your answer to that question?
I would say the first piece of information you should know is that Donald Trump was elected president. So let that sink in first of all.
Yeah.
If you just woke up. The second piece of information that you should know is that basically So not only was Donald Trump president, but there are people who essentially believe that he is the savior of humanity. So sort of there's very strange online cult who believe in this very elaborate conspiracy theory, and it's based upon basically this. So they believe that the world is controlled by a satanic cabal of pedophiles, and they believe that this cabal, they control everything. They control all entertainment and the media and politicians. They essentially hold all the levers of power. And the QAnon followers further believe that this cabal basically would have continued ruling the world indefinitely were it not for the election of Donald Trump. They think that Trump knew all about this cabal, and he was basically helped be elected in order to help defeat them. Now, they believe that Trump isn't fighting this cabal entirely in secret. They think that he's basically revealing the details about this battle on these image boards. It started on 4chan, later moved to 8chan, and now it's currently on 8kun. And QAnon followers believe that by decoding these Q drops, as they call them, which are these weird, strange messages, they can sort of like uncover the kinds of information that they think is very secret, that the mainstream media isn't telling us. Now, in practice, what this actually just leads people to believing all kinds of nonsensical things, such as that the deep state is firing missiles at Air Force One from submarines, or that JFK Jr. Faked his death in 1999. He's going to come back to help defeat this cabal, or that lots and lots of other basically nonsensical things. And it's basically this bizarre online-based extremist movement that was formed from this belief that Donald Trump is the savior of humanity,
which is just bananas to me. A lot of people. I've hated on Donald Trump the entire time he was in office, but I strongly dislike the man way before he got into politics. And a lot of people that I know confuse that with me just being a do-nothing Dem or snowflake, I hate Republicans, whatever. And that's just not the case. But Donald Trump, to view him as a savior of anything is just beyond reason to me in general to begin with. So already these guys are just totally off to a horrible start with logical thinking people. What made you want to get into QAnon? Like, was there a specific instance that occurred, and when did that happen?
So, I mean, the very first Q drop started all the way back on, it was actually on October 28th, 2017. And it claimed essentially that Hillary Clinton's arrest was imminent, that she was just on the verge of being arrested. Now, of course, that didn't happen, which was... Q got a wrong prediction on the very first drop. But what Q did do is that Q started just basically asking these kind of leading questions and started asking these using these very cryptic phrases. And this was very engaging because it made these people on 4chan feel like they are participating in uncovering these grand secrets about who really pulls the strings of the world. And that kind of gamified experience, I don't know, it pulled a lot of people in, and soon it started basically spreading outside of the chance, started being in the Q drop started to spread to YouTube and Twitter and other places, and other people. Like, all of a sudden it wasn't just people who were on the chans who thought that there was something legitimate to this, that Q, what they call is basically the entity that posted on 4chan was a real government insider. It was average middle-aged moms on Facebook started thinking this as well. And so all of a sudden there was this weird movement that started forming based upon, was essentially as a lie that they had basically a direct path to secret information from deep inside the government through these bizarre Q drops. So
it started on 4chan, like you said, and there was kind of a trend going with different anonymous users on 4chan. There was FBI anon, there was CIA anon, so different people were kind of doing the same thing. What do you think made Q the one that like really stuck?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you point out, I mean, the whole trend of like anons on these image boards pretending that they have inside information is a common thing. It's been done over and over and over again for years. Like you mentioned, FBI anon, which is a similar kind of deal back in 2016, or there's another one called Mega Anon. Again, so this was kind of like a genre of post on the chans. What made QAnon unique is that it wasn't merely that it claimed to have insider information, but he added the extra element, like I mentioned, of gamification. It wasn't just people on the chans receiving the information. It was they felt like they had to add to it, participate, uncover secrets. They felt like they were doing research. They weren't really, actually. They were just sort of like, building upon each other's fantasies. They was like, it's kind of improvisational in a way. Yeah. It's very yes and, where I think that they take one piece of information, they add to another, and then Q repeats this sort of these nonsense conspiracy theories, and they feel validated in this way. And through this kind of like it creates this feedback loop in which the anons feel like they are, again, part of a movement to uncover the capital T truth about what's really going on, the real great grand super conspiracy. It just wraps people in because it's so engaging.
So what one of my biggest problems with QAnon and just kind of where we're going now, and we'll jump into that a little bit more later, but like, I'm a skeptic, right? I mean, I recognize that the United States government has done terrible things in the past, is capable of doing terrible things now and in the future. And, I'm not like a definite, the 9/11 was an inside job kind of guy, but I'm skeptical of crazy historical moments in time. But I feel like QAnon, because it's such a big umbrella, and QAnon followers are being kind of viewed as just insane, crazy people, which a lot of them seemingly are, it kind of delegitimizes some of the other possible legitimate conspiracies that have happened over time. And that's something that kind of bugs me about it, is because it's just like it covers so much stuff that if something crazy is actually happening, not saying that Hillary Clinton's running a pedophile ring, but children are being trafficked, right? So that's a good example. Like, so there's truth sprinkled into QAnon. Would you say that? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of frustrating in that way because, skepticism of, powerful people is a good thing. And skepticism of, what the mainstream media is saying, I think is a healthy thing. You shouldn't take people's word for it, especially if they're very wealthy or they're very powerful. The issue is that they have this kind of weird knee-jerk reaction to all basically what they call the mainstream narrative. And I mean, I'm of the opinion that, sometimes the mainstream narrative, whatever you call it, is wrong and sometimes it's right. But QAnon followers have a little bit more radical stance. They believe it's just always wrong in the sense that even on basic things, like, for example, they didn't believe that Joe Biden would really be inaugurated on January 20th because that was the mainstream narrative. Right. I mean, right. That's just ludicrous. I mean, obviously sometimes everyone is saying the same thing because it's true, not because they're trying to brainwash you. I mean, you're right. It is frustrating because there are corrupt people. There are real conspiracies that I think is worth being uncovered. And that's, I think, a big goal of investigative journalism, to figure out what powerful people are up to. So the corrupt things that they're doing are being exposed. The issue is that, they're more interested in going down the QAnon followers are more interested in going down these like wild goose chases and spinning these wild fantasies than uncovering genuine, real corruption.
Right. Well, and it's also frustrating, like you mentioned, that their obsession with the mainstream media as a negative thing and not believing anything, especially when it comes to anonymous, unnamed sources and articles. But then they're getting all of this fake information, disinformation from a completely anonymous source. And it's just a mind-boggling logic. Now that we're talking about the mainstream media, I think this is a very important question moving forward for almost anybody. What news sources do you trust, Travis View?
That's a really good question. You know what? I have to say, man, I still have a lot of good Associated Press, for example. I mean, it's a wire service, but they're still really stringent in the kinds of things that they publish, and that's why they're considered the gold standard. They're considered a very middle of the road thing. So I tend to trust the things that them and Reuters publish, because they've been building up reputation for like 150 years for the kinds of news that's worthy of being published. So, I still think that they publish, real straight news with a little political bias. So, yeah.
Let's see. What did January 6th mean to you? As someone who's followed this for as long as you have and have been kind of waving the red flag for as long as you have, what did January 6th mean to you?
I mean, yeah, January 6th was really the culmination of it's really like a nightmare. I wouldn't even call it the worst case scenario of what QAnon would mean, but it was certainly a bad scenario. I was talking with other happened on January 6th on the previous day. And we sometimes speculated that, we were talking about like how many people do you think might, die? Because all of a sudden there's basically this big crush of extremists who are flooding or coming to DC, and they're going to be furious because they believe all of these lies about the election. So we knew it was going to turn ugly. So we were hoping it wouldn't get, it wouldn't involve any casualties, but unfortunately it did. So yeah, it was just a representation of basically what happens when a lot of people are pumped full of lies. They lied, for example, all these people, they believe that, for example, that the election was stolen. That was totally illegitimate. They also believe that, for example, Vice President Pence somehow had the ability to by himself reject electoral votes from certain states that he believes to be fraudulent. The vice president does not have that power, as Pence himself explained in a letter on January 6th. So I mean, yeah, it's just to me, it was a representation that all of this misinformation we see on the internet is not harmless. It can drive people to take some really dangerous actions. It can even lead to deaths.
Yeah, when I heard his Trump speech on the 6th, first thing that came to mind was he's going to start a riot. This is a major problem. And I found it ironic in the days after, once some of the videos started coming out from inside of the Capitol, some cell phone videos, security footage, whatever. The whole thing with QAnon is trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan. And a lot of them got in the Capitol, and you can hear them saying, "What's the plan? What next?" What they did exactly what the president told them to do, which was go to the Capitol. They got inside and they didn't know what to do. Some of them had very sinister ideas of things that they were trying to do. But a lot of them I just felt like were just there because, like you said, they were kind of fed so many lies that just led them right in. It's just such a crazy thing. And because of it, it's kind of, I feel like, opened up a lot of people's eyes to the problem that's going on with QAnon. And it led me to wonder what somebody like me could do. What can my listeners do to help the spread of misinformation?
I mean, the number one thing you can do is generally, I guess, insist upon the truth. If someone presents you with a lie, try and find what the truth is and present it to them. But I guess more broadly, if you know someone who is deep down the rabbit hole and their entire life basically revolves around believing and spreading these lies. I don't know. I generally would encourage you to try to get them away from the computer, because it's like an addiction. It's like any kind of addiction where, these people, their issue is that they derive so much of their life meaning from spreading these conspiracy theories. And, if you just like if you're an alcoholic and you only feel good when you are on the sauce, you need to find some other way to feel good. It's the same way with people who are addicted to these internet conspiracy theories. You need to find something else. You need to find a hobby. You need to find a career. You need to take up hiking. Something else besides absorbing nonsense to make you feel like, you're doing something worthwhile with your time.
I really think that the pandemic really, really just made this whole thing explode, because the people that are typically into Q stuff were already generally outraged by the lockdowns and the masks mandates and things of that nature, but also they're stuck at home on their computers or on their phones or whatever. And like I said earlier in the show, one click can lead you all the way down the rabbit hole and you're gone. I know people that are on their way there, and I know people that are all the way there. And that's my next question. What is your advice to people who have close friends and or family who have been red-pilled?
Yeah, like I said, my general advice is to try to get them away from the computer, the thing that's making them crazy, as much as possible. But also understand that they're still the same person that they were before they got red pilled, but they've developed it's an addiction. And I think that I try to develop sympathy for them as much as you would someone who would develop any other kind of addiction.
I've tried to think of different ways to talk to different people, recognizing that everybody kind of learns differently, everybody kind of intakes information differently. I've thought of doing things from silent interventions, writing letters to people so that it's not a face-to-face confrontation, allowing them to kind of digest it at their own pace, no interruptions or anything like that. It's just, family members. I have family members that are questioning this stuff. Luckily, like people like my mom have called me and asked questions because I've gotten into this stuff. And I know that people in their age group are very susceptible to this stuff. They weren't at first, but since this has kind of exploded, especially during the pandemic, it feels like so many people are on there. What are some of the different conspiracies, not conspiracies, but what are some of the ways that they attracted an older audience, an audience that wasn't on 8chan and 4chan and stuff like that? Like Save the Children, I know, was one, but what are some of the other things that people can kind of look out for?
Like you mentioned, the one of the popular ones was Save the Children. This was basically this campaign to basically whitewash QAnon, and there were Save the Children marches all over the country in which people felt like they are participating in the fight against human trafficking. And of course, they actually weren't. Every sort of major human trafficking nonprofit organization that helps actually fight this problem issued a statement denouncing QAnon because they're doing things, for example, like clogging the human trafficking hotline with bogus tips, which made it harder for people with real information to help real people get through. The reasons, these kinds of conspiracy theories, they aren't just, it's not just something that appeals to, angry internet nerds. And it's not something that even appeals to just, white boomers. It's something that sort of that really, inspires people's, curiosity and minds, because we all want to have esoteric knowledge. We all want to feel like we're not being bamboozled. We want to feel like we're just sort of like conformists who go along with what everyone else is saying. And these are like normally healthy kind of impulses, I think. But QAnon hijacks them and makes people feel hijacks this impulse and makes people feel like they're getting inside information when really they're just being pumped full of garbage.
It's a LARP that you can almost choose your own ending to. You're baking all these breadcrumbs and coming up with your own conclusion of what you think the dots connect to. And it's so staggering to me, the level of genius it takes to come up with something like this, but also to push it for as long as they have and to make it as widespread as it has gotten. I want to ask you, obviously nobody knows for sure who the author of the Q drops are. It could be one person or multiple people. But who's your best guess? Who do you think is the closest involved in the starting of this whole mess?
So the probably the best candidates for the people behind QAnon are probably Ron and Jim Watkins. And Jim Watkins is the owner of the website 8chan 8kun, where Q posted for years. And Ron Watkins is his son, who is the administrator of the site. And there are lots of reasons to believe why they essentially controlled the QAnon trip code, which is basically this cryptographic method of verifying Q's identity, and also authored some of the Q drops. And now there's also some reason to believe that there's a South African man named Paul Ferber who is perhaps involved in the inception of QAnon. But generally, the evidence regarding who exactly was involved in the early Q drops is kind of scarce, and is complicated by the fact that a lot of the people who are sort of involved in these Chan LARPs and stuff are notorious liars.
Right.
And so it's a very difficult thing to investigate. There's a really great podcast called was it Q Clearance that goes into some of the evidence regarding Q's origins, but it is an active field of research, and I certainly hope we get a clear picture of like who exactly is responsible for this. But I would say Jim and Ron Watkins bear the most responsibility based upon what we know so far.
Those are the two people that I look at and just it screams Q to me. When Ron Watkins quit 8kun allegedly on election day, it kind of felt like his Twitter feed just turned into Q drops. And like, I don't know how I was kind of a new follow of his. And I will say that I might have been one of the, if not the last person that Ron Watkins blocked on Twitter the day that he got banned, which was pretty awesome for me. But I just look at Ron Watkins and he screams author of QAnon drops to me just because of how articulate he is and how, I don't know how else to say it, but just corny to me. It just feels like this guy is sitting on his computer like, what's going to work up these people the most? And Jim is so weird. I dove into the Goldwater videos some, and he is a trip. He is an absolute trip. How important do you think that it is to unmask these guys, to expose the people behind this? How important do you think it is to do that?
I think it is really important purely for accountability reasons. I mean, I think, again, QAnon is cancerous. There's no benefit to it. It's hurt a lot of people. So I think it's worthwhile to identify who is responsible for it. Now, I want to be very, very clear, however, is that unmasking who is QAnon isn't going to affect the trajectory of it, because it's kind of a self-sustaining engine now and has been for a long time. So I think that while it's worthwhile to know who is responsible, again, in a responsible, evidence-based way, we should be sort of clear-eyed about the fact that it's not going to, uncovering the origins of QAnon isn't going to dissolve this thing overnight. It's not going to make people stop believing in QAnon all of a sudden. But yeah.
So it's like, I feel like it's less important now because, like you said, nothing can stop the trajectory of it. I feel like if they would have figured out who it was or exposed who it was prior to election day, it would have had a different impact, because it would have instantly delegitimized all of the lies, all of them instantly, for some. And I mean, you're never going to recover everybody from QAnon, but I think it's just important to get as many people as possible to come back as often as possible at this point, because it's so toxic, and I've been trying to stay away from some of it. I knew that I was going to have you on the show, which I've been very excited about, but you get down these rabbit holes, and I don't know how you do it like you do. I mean, this is like what you do, right? That you're all the way in on reading every drop, and you're analyzing this stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, have been researching, QAnon since July of 2018. I've been closely following, the Q drops and the theories and the main promoters and the way it spread from different social media networks. I track, for example, the way in which it spread to newer social media platforms like TikTok and stuff. It has been. It's not just me. There's there are lots of other great investigators. Mike Rothschild has been following this forever. Will Sommer at the Daily Beast has been tracking this for a long time. There's great investigators on Twitter. One of them's named Dapper Gander, and the other one's named Poker Politics. Of course, there's also Mark Andre Argentino, who's this academic who follows it very closely on Twitter. There are lots of people who've been trying to basically get a handle on what this weirdness is and how it's affecting people and how it's spreading. But it is, I don't know, just a fascinating, I guess, sociological, psychological study. And,
Do you guys communicate often back and forth, share information that you're finding, I assume, and just kind of bounce ideas off of each other?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people who are drawn to this kind of research, they communicate with each other. I certainly talk to other researchers. They share information. We try and figure out what exactly the new trends are. If there are any serious dangers we need to look out for. I mean, we really am more interested in is the QAnon community going to start posing any more sort of serious extremist threats and these sorts of things? Because it is basically a online research community that's I certainly have benefited greatly from.
I had January 6th and January 20th circled on the calendar. The 6th was planned in the open on social media. Luckily, nothing else really happened on the 20th. But are there any dates coming up that are being talked about as next possible attacks, or dates that people should be wary of?
I would keep an eye out for March 4th. Now, QAnon followers, they adopted this very strange argument from the sovereign citizen movement, which essentially believes that there are no legitimate amendments to the Constitution after the 14th, they think, because the United States is a corporation. All of this is a lie, obviously. They have a very confused legal understanding. But because of this, they think that actually Trump is still president, or he's actually going to be president, because his next inauguration date is going to be on March the 4th. Obviously, that won't happen, but I'm very curious to see how they're going to react when that day comes and goes.
Right. What's the next line in the sand going to be? Because after Election Day, it was just new lines in the sand being drawn. Okay, just wait for this day, or just wait for this day. And then the 6th came, and it was like, this is the day. And then the 20th. So, yeah, I did. I saw you mention this stuff. I've heard you guys talk about the sovereign citizen stuff on your show before a little bit. And that just is so bonkers to me, but it also fits right into the whole thing, I guess. So you mentioned some QAnon promoters. Obviously, a lot of these promoters have been pushed off of major platforms like Twitter and Facebook, but still they're worth mentioning, I suppose. Who are some of the most prominent QAnon promoters?
I mean, there are a few big ones. There's a guy named Praying Medic who is not a great guy. He's someone who is he sells a lot of these miracle cures, especially like divine healing and stuff. And he did that before he got into QAnon. He kind of used the QAnon audience to funnel people into his grift. There's another one named Jordan Sather. He's a guy who's into basically UFO disclosure. It was the belief that the government has access to secret, highly advanced UFO alien technology, and it's going to be revealed any day now. And then he got the QAnon too. So there's still a small community of people who claim to interpret the Q drops and promise what's coming next. And like you mentioned, they've been booted off every major social media platform, but they still operate on Telegram, for example. They still operate on this website called Clout Hub. So they're still active, still deceiving people, but they do not have the same kind of reach that they did, even last year.
And these guys are making a ton of money off this stuff, right? At least it kind of feels like that, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they do a lot of money in, like I said, donations and book sales, and like I said, Praying Medic, he has a divine healing course that he sells for like $125 a pop to people, and yeah, it's a scam. I mean, it's like any other kind of snake oil salesman who can, they can make a lot of money doing this, unfortunately.
So one thing that you've talked about quite a bit on your show, QAnon Anonymous, is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she's been making headlines a lot recently. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on who is Marjorie Taylor Greene and why is she important?
Yeah, so Marjorie Taylor Greene is a member of Congress from Georgia's 14th district, and she is someone who is she inherited a construction company from her father. She also she owned and sold a CrossFit gym, but she started getting into kind of like politics and conspiracy theories back in like 2015 and 2016. She started publishing for this conspiracy theory website called American Truth Seekers, and it's basically and she started promoting basically every conspiracy theory under the sun that you could possibly imagine. Sure, and some of them were really outrageous, like for example, the tragic events in Charlottesville, the white nationalist rally. This was some kind of false flag event. She also made really awful conspiracy theories about school shootings and stuff. She promoted lots of bizarre conspiracy theories, like for example the claim that JFK Jr. was murdered by Hillary Clinton in 1999. She did 9/11 conspiracy theories. She did one most famously, the belief that the California wildfires back in 2018 were actually caused by basically a plot between the governor of California and Rothschild Inc. and the energy company PG&E as part of a plot to basically defraud Californians. This was actually the famous Jewish space lasers conspiracy theory, and that phrase started trending on Twitter. So yeah, she's someone who is basically extremely conspiratorial, but then she got the idea to run for Congress, and initially she ran in the Georgia's 6th district, but then the incumbent in Georgia's 14th retired. She saw an opportunity. She moved over to Georgia's 14th district. She ran there, and she won, because that is the kind of bizarre mindset that the people of Georgia's 14th district wanted. So yeah, she kind of rode to Congress on the back of this bizarre conspiratorial worldview.
What do you think is going to be her outcome? I mean, do you think, obviously she's in the news because she's fighting with Democrats about masks and this and that, and people are asking to have her unseated and stuff like that. She's wearing masks that say censored and Trump won and this and that. What do you think is going to be the outcome here?
I mean, honestly, I think she is the natural heir to Trump. She is someone who is extremely outrageous and just says outrageous things, and she knows how to get headlines, and she loves being attacked. Honestly, she loves, because then she can turn around to her followers and say, look at the MSM is coming after me, the Democrats are coming after me, and the establishment Republicans are coming after me, and she can use this for fundraising and stuff, and she use it to boost her profile, because my God, I mean, honestly, I think she's a prime candidate for the Republican primary for the presidential election in 2024, assuming Trump doesn't run. But I think Trump once called her the next Republican star, and honestly, I believe that.
Wow, that's so bizarre to think about. I mean, I'm all about freedom of speech, and that's kind of a question that I want to ask you too, is like, obviously it's not illegal for people to post QAnon stuff. It's to think these crazy things, but it's just scary to think about how many people will jump on board with all that. And, I hope it doesn't happen. with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I really do. And there's another congressperson that's into QAnon too, right? Besides her, is there another one?
There's someone else who her name is Lauren Boebert, and she is a member of Congress from Colorado, and she appeared on a couple of QAnon live streams. So she was kind of like willing to court the QAnon community and sort of turn to the QAnon community for support. But interestingly, she never actually endorsed QAnon. So I think this is actually probably interesting because this is probably going to be a strategy for a lot of Republicans who aren't willing to go as far as endorse QAnon because they recognize that's crazy, but they do recognize that QAnon followers are a highly engaged base of the Republican Party, and therefore it's to their benefit to cater to them a little bit, wink and nod, not necessarily say QAnon is true, but kind of like go on their shows and sort of wink their way and sort of use QAnon for money and ground support for their elections.
It's just so insane to me, and how it all works, and it just spreads like wildfire, and let's hope it kind of stops at these two, at least in government. But I want to kind of move on to another topic that is kind of becoming trending about QAnon. When I go on Twitter, I see a lot of people talking about it being what is known as a Psyop. What is a Psyop? Do you think Q fits the description? And why could it be so controversial to call it that?
So yeah, a psyop is a psychological operation, and this is actually a common military tactic to basically influence the population. If a military force wants to, I don't know, demoralize the enemy, then they'll spread flyers or something or they want to boost their own morale, or they want to fool the enemy and to deceive them with misinformation. This is a psyop. I mean, this has been part of military tactics, since the beginning of organized combat. So, when people talk about QAnon is a psyop, they can mean a bunch of different things. I mean, it's like sometimes they say when people define psyop, it's so broad. They'll say it's sort of an intent to deceive people, or it's a sort of a operation designed to make people believe things and motivate them to action. My problem with that kind of definition is that it's so broad that like a billboard for McDonald's might be categorized as a psyop. A billboard motivates you to want to buy McDonald's at the next rest stop. So maybe in that sense, QAnon is a psyop because it's designed to basically drive support for Donald Trump. But I don't think it's very helpful. But I guess the more narrow definition is that it's a military psyop. It's like sometimes people believe that who are anti-QAnon, who believe that actually QAnon was the product of military intelligence officials who knew what they are doing and doing something very specific to basically organize this cult. That I don't think is very well supported, honestly. I mean, like we talked about earlier, a lot of the things about QAnon, like the pretending to have insider information, really just sort of emerged organically from Chan culture. And I think that's like generally a more kind of like satisfying kind of explanation about why QAnon happened. I mean, sometimes people argue that there basically essentially was this grand conspiracy at play that involved ex-intelligence officials and some LARPers and some YouTubers and in a sort of concerted attempt to create this fascist cult. Here's the thing, man. Like lots of people have like looked into that theory, better reporters than me for NBC News and other places, but they just haven't found a whole lot of substance to it. I hope we come up with a really comprehensive answer about who exactly is responsible for kicking off QAnon. But the idea that is sort of like it was sort of like a top-down organized effort on the part of these disgruntled intelligence officials. I mean, it's just more conspiracy theory than actually substantive fact to me.
I just hope that there's a lot of things that get uncovered here in the next year or two. And that kind of leads me to my next question is, where do we go from here? I mean, what do you think is going to happen in 2021 as far as QAnon goes regarding investigations, things that the Biden administration might do to try and fight domestic terrorism and things like that?
Yeah, people in the Biden administration have said that they're going to give more priority to issues of combating domestic extremism. And I really hope that happens. I mean, but I hope that happens without resorting to things like more domestic spying or like anything like that. But generally, I hope that when I talk to people about who are sort of investigating the space, they really talk more about de-radicalization efforts and providing basically alternatives. And one of them is ironically enough, like providing better male role models and people in the local community, people who can be looked up to, and provide sort of a better path and a better sort of vision for people's lives that don't involve going online, fantasizing and LARPing and stuff. So I think that moving forward, the goal is to really help de-radicalize people, help find alternative ways to find meaning in their life. In terms of investigations, there's this really great Twitter account called the Q Origins Project. I think it's just at Q Origins, and it's taking sort of a real granular deep dive into every single thing that we really know about the origins of QAnon, and it's a really evidence-based, skeptical, slow project, and it is bearing fruit slowly. But the problem is that because of these image boards, they're by design anonymous. They don't yield a whole lot of information. As a consequence, the investigations into them are slow. But I do think that more details are probably going to be emerged about how this happened, especially if law enforcement gets more involved and they start declassifying what happened with QAnon as criminal.
You mentioned domestic surveillance, and that's something that really kind of feels like a real possibility in trying to uncover all this stuff as a negative side effect for the rest of us that aren't into this crazy stuff. I hope it doesn't go down that road entirely, but at least it feels like social media providers and platforms are definitely handing over information. It seems like if you had a phone and you were in the Capitol that on the 6th, they're telling on you. At least that's the vibe I'm getting. Like I often say that, listen, any sort of additional sort of surveillance capabilities are unnecessary, especially when you consider the people who committed their crimes. They often live streamed it, they're telling on themselves. You read the sort of the affidavits that led to these people's arrests. They often talked about what they did on Facebook. They're very open about it. They don't have very good what we call OPSEC. So I don't think I would strongly resist against any further attempts to surveil people who are part of these extremist movements. Number one, because I think it's unnecessary, and number two, like you mentioned, the rest of us, the innocent people, will probably suffer consequences as a result of that. I only have a couple more questions for you before I let you go here, but I wanted to bring up the Q Shaman, probably the most recognizable face from January 6th to people who weren't following along and people who had no idea what QAnon was, and they see this guy with horns and a spear and Viking tattoos and things like that, and they just think that it's this craziest thing that they've ever seen. But when I saw this, because of things that you guys have talked about on your show, and you've mentioned him and you've met him, I felt generally bad for him the days following, when people like Lynn Wood and other people were trying to kind of spread the conspiracy that he was Antifa and things like that. So knowing this guy was so pro-Q, and on their big day, he gets thrown to the wolves by the people that were basically leading him there, it just kind of struck me as a terrible thing for this guy. But as someone who knows a lot more about the Q Shaman than I do, and certainly my listeners do, what can you tell me about him, and what were you kind of thinking about when you saw that he was kind of the face of this whole thing.
Yeah. So the Q Shaman. Yeah, I've met him on a couple of occasions. I met him once at a Save the Children rally in Los Angeles. I met him a couple times in Arizona. So yeah, his real name is Jacob Chansley, but he also goes by Jake Angeli. He was sort of like a struggling actor and stuff, but he's someone who is deeply into QAnon. And he posted all these ludicrous videos of himself, doing things like, chanting outside of the Arizona Capitol building. It was really, I've always knew him as sort of like one of the most colorful characters in QAnon. I had no idea he would wind up becoming internationally famous as a consequence of raiding the Capitol. I didn't think that would happen. But what did happen was that it was really super bizarre to see, like you mentioned, Lynn Wood and all these people try to claim that actually he's Antifa, or actually he's a Black Lives Matter guy, or actually he was sort of a pro climate change action guy, which is so bizarre, because I've known him for months and months, and it was never questioned that he was not only a QAnon follower, but one of the most enthusiastic QAnon followers in the entire movement. Like I said, I met him once at a Q conference, and then he was there, and he was talking to all the other Q influencers. So it was never a question. He was accepted in the community. He was recognized in the community. But all of a sudden, when he starts creating these problems for the QAnon community, or perhaps he makes some of the broader right look bad, all of a sudden he's an Antifa? No, I mean, it was bizarre to witness that weird disinformation campaign around him.
And it happened so fast. Like, it was just like, this guy was clearly at a BLM rally, so obviously he's not with us. Meanwhile, he has a sign that literally says Q sent me. Just gotta laugh. Before I let you go, I want to talk more about your show, the QAnon Anonymous podcast, otherwise known as simply QAA. I love the show. Congratulations on all the success that you guys are getting with it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your show, and how did you guys start it, and what kind of made you guys want to get into doing it?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I really started researching QAnon through my Twitter account all the way back in July of 2018. I started noticing that this QAnon stuff, I was vaguely aware of it before, but I kind of dismissed this as dumb 8chan stuff. But then I noticed that it started leaking out onto Twitter and to some mainstream conservative commentators with verified accounts started promoting these baseless QAnon conspiracy theories. And that concerned me very, very much. And so I started keeping track of it on Twitter. And then sort of independently of me, my co-hosts, Jake and Julian, they had also recognized that QAnon seemed to be a sort of a growing phenomenon that was worth tracking. So they started the podcast, actually, QAnon Anonymous. And somewhere around their 8th episode, they wanted to bring on some guests, and they found me, and they invited me on, and we clicked really well. And ever since, so that was back in October of 2018. Ever since, we've been making 2 episodes a week. There's one regular episode and one premium, basically about the movement and different elements of the movement, and kind of the background and why people believe this, and the different characters, and the different sort of the ways in which these people get radicalized. Because I think it's just a really fascinating topic, and I think it's really important to shine a light on the different aspects of this belief system. So yes, that's how it's really got started. Like I said, when we first started tracking it, we were only a handful of reporters who were like even vaguely aware of QAnon. We could not have predicted it would grow as much as it has. I mean, I did what I could to try and make people aware that this was a bad thing for a couple of years, but it seems like quite recently, a lot more people recognize that it is a damaging thing. So I'm certainly glad to have so many allies recognize that this really is a cancerous thing that should be countered.
It really has to be. I mean, there's no other way. And I try to encourage fact checking on social media, and for people to listen to great shows like yours, and because the best we can do, and I struggle with it, and that's kind of why I stay away from politics and things on my show, is because there's a crushing paralyzing responsibility to get what you're talking about right, especially when it's something that's important. And so I can dick around and talk about aliens all day because who cares? But when it comes to this stuff that's happening in the real world, I have to just congratulate you on the way that you guys are doing it, and the way that you guys are reaching your audience, and the way that you're making it easier to understand and slightly less brain breaking to kind of follow along with this stuff. And it's really kind of carried me the distance through this whole thing. And this is a big moment for me talking to you simply on a personal level because of all of that, because you kind of got me started down the rabbit hole and helped me realize the significance of this, the urgency of needing to do something behind it. So I really thank you for that, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. I mean, I think it's really interesting. So yeah, happy to have your support. Thank you.
Absolutely. I just have one more question for you before I let you go. And it's, how do you take a break from this stuff? Like, are you able to just turn off a light switch and just say, you know what, I'm just going to stay away from Twitter today? Is that something that you find yourself doing often, or are you just in all the time?
If I'm being honest, I have a pretty bad Twitter addiction, but what I have done is that I got into hiking, which has been a big help. So what I do is that when I take a hiking day, I grab my backpack, I grab my water bottle, I go out in nature outside of cell phone service, and I spend a couple hours where I couldn't check my Twitter account even if I wanted to. And that usually helps center me and bring me back to sanity before I have to dive back in again. That's
fantastic. Excellent. Travis, thank you so much for being on the show. I really, really appreciate it. You can find QAnon Anonymous anywhere you want to listen to on podcasts. I personally listen to it on iTunes, and it's fantastic. Travis, new episodes every Wednesday, right?
Yes, new episodes every Wednesday. We usually have a premium every Friday, too, if you sign up with Patreon.
Excellent. Travis View, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody out there, make sure you check out youknowmeascbd.com. Use promo code MBN, get 20% off, free shipping and a free gift. Check out mbnnetwork.com. It's never been easier for you to find your new favorite podcast. And make sure you check out QAnon Anonymous podcast. It's absolutely fantastic. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.